Joining us now in studio, it's fun having him in studio. I think the benefit of summer break from Cedarville is going to make this happen. Professor Sean O'Connor from Cedarville University, welcome back.
Thank you very much. It's been almost a year, I think, since my first time in the studio.
That's right.
We were talking about last year's summer movies, and so it's good to be back doing it again this year.
Yeah. So you finished the school year, and did you give a really hard final, make kids cry and such?
Well, they didn't cry in front of me, but some of the professors in the major where I teach, which is a general digital media major at Cedarville, they have final projects instead of final exams.
Sure.
I do both, and the final exam is more like reflection questions. It's not really something they study for. They just kind of share their experiences and things they personally learned throughout the semester. Hopefully that's beneficial. It is for me, just to see how they've grown from beginning to end.
So then in that department at Cedarville University, is that could you learn how to tell stories, create films, documentaries?
Yeah,
that kind of
so
thing?
there's all kinds of courses on different types of media writing for narrative or broadcast news or documentaries. I teach classes, different levels of production and working with cameras and lights, and started a video editing course a couple years ago. And we're always looking for other courses to add and ways to expand our program and give students those opportunities to learn how to tell stories, but also glorify God and preach the gospel.
Amen. You know, I love that concept because there's so many Christians who have kind of decided, because of some of the depravity in Hollywood or in media, it's like run away. We need to abandon it. Yeah. Obviously, you don't agree with that concept. Why not abandon Hollywood?
Sure. Well, I think there's a huge audience for sure, and it matters the messages that they get and the worldview that's perceived and communicated. And as I think we've been finding in even the last 20 years with certain movies like Passion of the Christ was a huge watershed moment for a lot of film studios to say, oh, Christians actually will come out in droves to see something that is clearly, they could say, marketing to this specific audience, but also it's proclaiming what the Bible says and demonstrating biblical truths. And I think there's opportunities for Christians to create that content, but also build relationships with other crew members and people in that industry to draw people to the Lord behind the scenes as well.
Yeah, and at whatever level someone's a part of that, I'm a person who believes that a powerful story can affect more heart and life change than a law.
Sure.
And I know it's not necessarily the conventional view per se, but a guy like Andy Crouch, who wrote the book Culture Making, would argue, as followers of Christ, we could make more of a difference in people's lives if we affect change in culture as opposed to politics and law. Would you agree with that, or is...
I think there's logic in that because it's appealing to emotion and there's absolutely an opportunity for a good movie to create empathy as well as sympathy, but empathy where you understand the decisions that a character in a story makes. And when you do, maybe you start to see your own worldview challenged a little bit and start to think about things very differently. And there have been plenty of movies and TV shows that have done that for non-biblical issues. Yeah. And I think there's absolutely a place for Christians to speak into that, and I hope that we can.
Do you see much interest in younger generations in terms of affecting culture change through art?
I've been really encouraged being at Cedarville and seeing that is the case. And there's students come to study media at Cedarville with a variety of interests. It's not like they all want to go into the film industry necessarily, but some want to go into broadcast television or just marketing for different nonprofits. And there's, again, opportunities to create content that is glorifying to the Lord, but build relationships with people that maybe, the audiences of our films never see, but God sees. And I think it's important to remember that.
If you're just tuning in with us in studio, Professor Sean O'Connor, Assistant Professor of Digital Media at Cedarville University. One of the things you want to do, which I'm super excited about, is go over the summer blockbusters And I'd be remiss if I didn't support my wingman, Ron, here, and ask you to tell me whether I really should be as excited as I am to go see Top Gun.
My wife and I saw it last week, and we enjoyed it very much.
I've heard it's better than the original.
It is better than the original in every way. Because we rewatched it on Netflix earlier this month, the original, and I hadn't seen it since like middle school. And I remember like thinking, yeah, there's like the characters I think in the original Top Gun, they are memorable because of their names and not their actual character. Like
Iceman,
Goose,
Jester,
exactly.
Goose. Yeah.
This new movie, the characters are characters. And I think it makes the film's drama more impactful, and the ending is more intense as a result of that, because you're seeing the character arcs of all these people, finish in a satisfying way. And I mean, on top of that, just the way it's made, they actually put the camera on the cockpits of the planes, and like the actors learned how to fly the planes and do some of the things that you see in the film. So it's like very, realistic, and I saw it on a huge screen with a massive sound system, and it was awesome.
So is this a product of just better writing exists today? Or, I mean, because the original Top Gun was a blockbuster.
Oh, yeah.
A game changer in the career for Tom Cruise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think he and others, writers and directors working around him, they're very passionate about let's make this film as good as it can be. And this movie was supposed to come out 2 years ago, and obviously with COVID, it got was on pause for a long time. And a lot of movies since then have the studios that have made them said, let's just put it on streaming. We'll get our money that way by getting subscribers. But I think it was worth the wait for Paramount, the studio that made Top Gun, to say, like, we know what we have, we like what we have, and we think people will come and see this movie and respond to it very positively. And so far, that's happening. I would encourage you to see it.
Did your wife give you a call sign on the way out, or are you still just Professor O'Connor?
Right. Yeah. What she did say, though, is that she would go see it again. She's never said that about any movie.
Really?
We said that in the theater. So that's a good sign.
But a bunch of Christians are nervous, because I remember as a little boy we had it on VHS, and I always was
There's a scene you have to fast forward.
I was like, I have to go to the bathroom, and I would get up and go because I didn't want to sit by my mom and watch it. So, and there's language.
Yeah.
So what do we do with that?
There's a little bit of that, and I think, and this is something we talk about on this show several times when I come on, is that I think being able to discern whether or not you can watch that depends on knowing your relationship with the Lord more than your interest in movies. I think prioritizing that relationship and being able to discern what is best and whatever, what doesn't cause you to sin, because if it does, cut it off. That's what Jesus says. And what I respond to in a film is probably different from other people, and so I think it depends on your relationship and what your sin issues are, and I think it's worth addressing. I personally did not have a problem with those material in the movie, some words, and it's certainly not graphic sex scenes or anything like that, which is fine, but. It'll bother some people, and I think it's worth looking into the rating. And there are websites like Plugged In that I think Focus on the Family still does, that kind of give a breakdown of, okay, what's in this movie, so you can know ahead of time and then make a decision. Okay, do I want to see this? Is this going to be beneficial for me? But
you're not a fan of formulas, clearly, where you're going to go, this film good, that film bad for Christians.
Right. I mean,
sometimes you can.
Yeah. I mean, if you're doing that based on just the content, I think that can be detrimental as well, because you're not – I think context is important, and I think that's still possible for a movie that is not made by Christians and maybe has objectionable content in it to still proclaim something that the Bible says is true, because God has set eternity in the hearts of men. We read that in the Bible, and I think it's very possible for a film to – communicate that without knowing it.
So there's a whole bunch of movies that are coming out this summer or already have come out. I wish we could chat about all of them. What's another one besides Top Gun that you would be excited about, either because you know it's going to be good or you heard it's going to be good, or whatever the measure? What else are you excited about?
Sure. So the rest of this month, you got the Jurassic Park sequel coming out this weekend.
It's like a mega sequel with the original cast.
Yep. And the new cast from Jurassic World. So that's this weekend, and then the next weekend is Lightyear, the Buzz Lightyear origin story from Disney, which I have mixed feelings about. I don't know. I hope it's good, but you never know. The weekend after that is Elvis, which is the Elvis Presley biopic with Austin Butler playing Elvis Presley and Tom Hanks is in it playing his manager. I'm very interested to see that. I've heard mixed things about that too, but I also know that based on what I've seen in the trailers, they touch on like his Pentecostal background a little bit and how that was influenced his performances. I'm curious to see how that is
music up in there
addressed. Exactly.
He recorded a whole bunch of gospel music over the years, but it's one of those where that's a huge bite to take to make an Elvis movie like that. You know what I mean? And it's either a swing or a swing and a miss or a home run.
Right.
There's really not much in between.
I think there's a reason why we haven't really had one for a long time. So, I mean, it just involves getting the estate of Elvis Presley involved, and there's so much money that has to be involved in it. And so I hope it's good. I would be very interested in seeing it. But that's June. And then next month we've got a movie that my wife is excited about is an adaptation of Where the Crawdads Sing. I don't know if anybody read that book, but it's a popular
We don't really
fiction
read
book.
books.
Not those kind of books.
Yeah.
We like the movie version, so this sounds great.
Right.
Yeah. What else we got? We got the Thor sequel coming out in July.
Right.
Very excited about that one.
Yep.
Should I be?
I don't know. I had the last Thor Ragnarok was a huge hit and was really well received because it had a lot of humor in it that I think made Thor a more believable believable characters, maybe not the right word, but empathetic.
Sure, there you go.
But it's one of those movies where I'm like, it's really entertaining, except for a couple jokes that I'm like, this should not be in a movie that I know kids watch.
Yeah.
And I'm anticipating that this new one will have some of that, and most Marvel movies do, unfortunately. But again, it's one of those things where I think if parents know what their kids are struggling with maybe, or they know their kids more than they know the movies, they can make those decisions wisely.
So how do you even go about discerning what movies to take to allow your kids to see? I mean, I recall when I was a kid, my mom loved the movie Goonies, right? And so she told her cousin about it. And her cousin got it for the little kids for the birthday party, and she was so offended she turned it off.
Yeah.
Because they were swearing at the beginning.
Oh, sure. Yep.
And I didn't even, as a kid, I didn't even notice it. And now as an adult, I'm like, wow, Mom, you showed that to me? Yeah. So
I think my parents had a similar reaction to Back to the Future several years ago. They showed it to my brother and me when we were maybe too young to get some of those words. And sometimes that happens, and it's all right. And I think when that happens, I think it's important to have discussions with your kids or parents or whoever, or friends. Say, okay, do you understand what they said or what happened in this scene? And then point to places in the Bible where it's like, okay, does God say this is right or wrong, and why? And again, I think knowing the Bible more than knowing movies is important, and that's why we can discern those things.
But it'd be easier just to let your kids watch VeggieTales on repeat.
Yeah.
That'd be easier than allowing them to see some things and hear naughty words.
Sure, but I think it's a huge benefit when the kids and parents can have that conversation, and have a discussion. And I think doing that early on hopefully allows the kids to think and discern for themselves and kind of build. And rather than just watching whatever the parents says, watch this or don't watch this, have a reason for those decisions.
So someone wants to know, and including me, what is up with these sequels? Everything's a repeat. Everything's what is wrong? Do we need more Christians out there writing new movies or something?
Well, I think, I wonder if the next few years we're going to see even more sequels and remakes just because
Why? Does that happen every 30 years?
Hollywood's out of ideas.
Yeah,
well,
what's up?
It's like a studio that spends, Top Gun Maverick probably cost maybe $150 million. That's a lot of money. And so they're like, we are making this movie because we know that there's a built-in audience for a movie like this. And so
That's
we
lazy.
expect them to come to the theater. Right? I mean, it is. It is. At worst, it's unoriginal and maybe rehashing new ideas, but it's more of a guaranteed business model, which is why we see it a lot. And hopefully, when a movie studio makes a lot of money on a movie like that, they can afford to take a risk on other movies that are more original that maybe won't make their money back as quickly because their original idea, or maybe they have actors or crew members that people don't recognize as like a brand name, so to speak. But that's a big reason why you're seeing that. And I don't think it's a bad thing, because I think, for instance, Top Gun Maverick, I thought was very enjoyable. There have been plenty of sequels. I thought A Quiet Place 2 last year was a solid sequel to that original film. So it's not that they're necessarily a bad thing, but they can be. And so I think it's important that not only we, when I talk to my students about coming up with original ideas, but also knowing what are the steps to telling a good story, what are the ingredients of a good story, no matter what the subject matter is. And hopefully they can learn how to tell good stories based on that.
Is Goonies 2 in the works yet?
Yeah.
I would not be surprised if it's in it's in somebody's head somewhere, and we might see it. I mean, we have this. I mean, Top Gun's been making a lot more money than I think they were expecting, and so we might see a lot of 80s legacy sequels, as we call them, coming out based on this. But
Back to the Future 4.
Yeah, we might.
Back to the Future.
Right.
Future.
Yeah.
Future.
We'll
Future
see.
Past. Days of Future Past. Wait, that's already taken.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so let me ask you this one. So you work with college students.
Yeah.
They're off living on their own for the very first time. Christian University. Do you hear much from them about what they experienced in terms of their family rules with consuming media since they're studying that field now?
Sure. It runs the gamut. We don't necessarily talk a lot about that, but I do recognize that, some students grew up with these rules, some grew up with these, and I never want to put my students in a position where I make them – because for some of my classes they watch films or, analyze films. And I never want to put them in a position where they're watching something that makes them uncomfortable. And so I work with them and the other faculty to curate that and make sure that whatever I'm showing them is beneficial and, avoids certain content. But I think – obviously, when students come to study that at a school like Cedarville, it tells me that it means something to them, and they want to make an impact in that field somehow. And I think Cedarville having that program at all is an indication that they think it's important too, which is exciting. Because as you were saying earlier, some Christians are like, let's just stay away from media. And I think to a degree that's a fair criticism, but I also think there's an opportunity for ministry, and I think a lot of filmmakers have seen that and have done that.
Did they come to you with regrets in terms of how their family operated, or do you not hear much of that?
They don't come to me. They might talk to their RA or something, but talk amongst themselves. But no, I think one of my goals is to help them think critically. As my former pastor says, think about your life and culture with your Bible in one hand and your newspaper in the other, and how do they balance each other out, and what does the Bible have to say about what to watch, what you have watched, what maybe you need to stop watching as a result of what the Bible is teaching you. There are some times where you're like, this TV show or this YouTube series, it's not being the most beneficial for my time, and I need to cut it out.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've thought about over the years too is there's there are films that have an offensive amount of profanity, and then there are others where it's there, and I get it. Like for example, if you're watching the old Saving Private Ryan,
sure,
I don't think anyone in a foxhole with artillery guns coming is saying, "Excuse me, pardon me, please, thank you."
Right.
And so, what do we do with that? We don't want to endorse profanity, but I certainly think it's real to put it in a foxhole.
Yeah. Again, I think context is important, and I think knowing, having those discussions between parents and children and friends to say like, what did we just see presented on screen, or what did we hear, and what does the Bible have to say about what we saw or heard, and then how should we then live? I think it's a conversation that will probably continue for the rest of my life, for the rest of all of our lives. And I think constantly being, putting the Lord first and praying, okay, should I see this? Should I have seen this? And if not, what can I do to put maybe barriers around myself to make sure that I don't expose myself to things that will trigger certain issues. I mean, that's a huge, lifelong struggle, I think.
Yeah.
And I think we always have to be on our guard.
Absolutely. Again, Sean O'Connor has been our guest today. He is assistant professor of digital media at Cedarville University, where if you've got a kid who's interested in writing and in any sort of area of digital media, let alone filmmaking, Cedarville University would be the place to go. For more information, you can go to cedarville.edu. Again, cedarville.edu. And then you can hang out with Professor O'Connor and watch movies.
Absolutely. And we love it.
Do the classwork and stuff.
Right, yeah.
Right.
On the side.
I can't wait to go see Top Gun. I can't wait.
Yeah.
Oh,
I keep trying to convince my wife to go with me.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like she'll like it, so you should take her.
She's my wingman, kind of. Mm-hmm. So who knows? All right. Thank you, Professor O'Connor. Appreciate you coming in today.
Thank you very much.